Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate. We're seeing how the chips are falling in the fight to take back the ISIS stronghold of Raqqa, with mostly Kurdish, but also some Arab militias together taking a key road on the key town and dam on the road to Raqqa, just 50 kilometers away. This ahead of the Turkish president's visit next week to Washington. He's angry over Washington's announcement that it's going to directly arm Syrian Kurdish militias. With us to talk about it, Metin Atmaca, who teaches social sciences at the University of Ankara. He's with us from the Turkish capital. We're also in the company of Şwan Zulal, fellow at King's College in London, Alexei Klebnikov of the Russian International Affairs Council, and from Washington, Bassam Barabandi, who advises the Syrian opposition's High Negotiations Committee. We heard this Thursday that from the U.S. Defense Minister again, he met with his Turkish counterpart on the sidelines of a conference in London on Wednesday during a trip to the Baltic states. Here's what Jim Mattis, answering a question from the Associated Press reporter Lalila Baldor, had to say about Recep Tayyip Erdogan's anger over the decision to arm the Kurds.
And we will work very closely with Turkey in support of their security on their southern border. It's Europe's southern border, and we'll stay closely connected. We have very open discussions about options, and we will work together. We'll work out any of the concerns. I'm not concerned at all about the NATO alliance and the relations between our nations. It's not always tidy, Lalita, but we work out the issues.
Metin Atmaca, will it all go swimmingly smoothly in the end next week in Washington?
I don't think it will go smoothly at all, since the President Erdogan has already expressed his anger over this decision. But when we look at it, it came out, this decision, especially after the Turkey bombed some of the bases of YPG in Syria in 25th of April. So it's kind of Turkish counterparts are kind of receiving this as a retaliation from the U.S. side. I mean, yes, there was such an intention since the Obama administration, arming the Kurds further and further, but then taking such a decision in a swift way, it was kind of a very big surprise for Turkey. And that's why I don't see next week that will go so smooth.
How will Erdogan react if he comes back with nothing? We've heard veiled threats that, for instance, there could be the closure of the Incirlik air base as for use for those carrying out airstrikes against ISIS.
Well, I mean, definitely there will be some small kind of retaliations, but it will not be as big as closing down the Incirlik bases, because in the end, Turkey is part of NATO, and Turkey is still one of the strong allies of the US in the region. But on the other hand, this will also affect the Kurdish issue here in Turkey too. I mean, it will delay further and further of coming on the table with the Kurdish counterparts here in Turkey and coming up with a solution, because in the end, I mean, as some of the guests here expressed, YPG is related with PKK, and Turkey's Kurdish politics is very much connected with the PKK as well. So in the end, I mean, we don't see a short-term solution for such a thing, but the decision by the US is going to escalate this conflict between the Turkish administration and the Kurds here in Turkey.
Şwan Zulal, we've also heard this week the US, it's arming the Syrian Kurds, but it's also going to help double up the capacity of what the so-called fusion center that does intelligence against the PKK inside of Turkey. is a lot of what we're going to hear next week from Erdogan, well, just a bit of grandstanding?
Well, I think from next week's meeting, probably Erdogan knows that what he can get, he's going to get more cooperation from the US intelligence community in terms of targets, PKK targets within Iraqi Kurdistan, and so on. And I don't think the US will appreciate Turkey attacking YPG positions within Syria. And in end of April, the US made their objection to the airstrikes by Turkey very clear. So from next week's meet, I think what's happened now, Trump's administration made their intention very clear that they will arm the Kurds. They want to take on ISIS capital, Raqqa, and they want to progress. As I said, the planning has been done 6 months ago and is still continuing. I don't know the timeline, but I would imagine once the Raqqa offensive starts, will take months. It's not going to happen very quickly. And the last thing they need, you need attacks on your allies, so they'll be busy elsewhere fighting. So I think one of the deals Erdogan can come back with will be more cooperation, intelligence cooperation, as you mentioned, in targeting. But one other thing President Trump could do is to try to reignite the peace talk. Because let's not forget, in 2005, when the peace talk broke down, 2 years prior to that, the peace process was progressing quite well in Turkey. Yes, a lot of skepticism around the time, but if we look at the toll on civilians and lives in Turkey during this peace process, the Kurdish communities and coming together, there was less violence within Turkey. Turkey was more stable. PKK were more willing to accept terms and so on. But given what happened in Turkish elections and within internal Turkish politics, the peace process was abandoned in 2005. And now we're here where the violence is at its worst within Turkey itself. So what the US could do is try to, give Turkey the carrot and stick approach and try to encourage them to hopefully, or maybe mediate. I mean, President Trump make himself a deal maker. Maybe he's the one he's trying to solve the Palestinian issue. Maybe this is another issue where it's actually very pressing at the moment and it's very solvable.
Let me bring in Metinat Maja very briefly. Do you see that happening, the rekindling of talks with, for instance, the imprisoned PKK leader, Öcalan?
No, I don't think so. It will come up soon. I mean, unfortunately, the last 2 years, as Siwan was saying, that since the talks broke out, it's not easy to come back to the table. I mean, close to 15 to 20 MPs of the Kurdish party is in prison, including the head of the party as well, both, co-directors. So, but on the other hand, they are still talking about coming back to the table for peace talks. I mean, both sides are ready, but on the other hand, the last 2 years created a memory that it's not easy to repair.
All right, not easy to repair. By the way, when Recep Tayyip Erdogan travels to Washington next week, the Turkish president will naturally be discussing, as we've said, Syria, the PKK, the extradition request for rival cleric Fethullah Gulen, who he accuses of masterminding that coup attempt last summer. There'll also be business talks. Note that the following week is the 36th annual conference on U.S.-Turkey relations, which draws top CEOs. Usually it's held at the Four Seasons Hotel in Washington. Times have changed, however. This year's event is being held at the Trump International Hotel inside the old Federal Post Office building near the White House. Bassam Barabandi, the idea of business deals, enough to move this annual conference to the Trump Hotel. What does that tell you about the nature of the talks next week in Washington between Trump and Erdogan?
Let's focus on Syria more than the Trump Hotel. I think today Syria is very much domestic problem or crisis in Syria is very much affecting the domestic policy in Turkey. I believe that Erdogan, when he talked with Trump, he will not talk about Raqqa or PYD, rather than he will try to talk about Syria as a whole. how to end all this crisis, starting from Assad in the power, ending to kind of the end game.
So you're saying that the business basically is happening in a parallel universe, the business side of stuff from the politics side
business
of stuff.
side, just to tell you, like all other countries, they know Mr. Trump is very much business-oriented. Everybody tried to satisfy him by contracts. Even poor countries, they came to the United States to invest in the United States. And usually these countries are used to be receiving big donors, big money from the U.S. So I think it's more to satisfy the atmosphere of President Trump. But the real business will be at the White House. I think will be more about Syria as a whole, about the Kurds, part of how Syria all will be evolved as a crisis. Russia is a very important player. I think everybody tried to get Russia on the table to play more constructive role rather than be on the opposite side obstacle. Iran is a big issue for everybody in Syria. So I don't think they will go in the details about Raqqa, about BYD, rather than the future, how we make sure as a Turkey that the weapons that reach to BYD will not use in Turkey, or it will not go to Iraq PKK to attack Turkey from other side, how to limit the Kurds violent in Syria and now we affect Turkey. I think everybody realized that we are reaching to the point that irreversible. I don't agree with one of colleagues who said that the decision of DOD was surprising to Turkey. No, they informed them 3-4 days before, officially. And the whole story was well known that United States is counting on the BYD. I think everybody tried to go one step forward, how to do something good business, politically, economically, intelligence, militarily, how to engage with Russia to be stabilizing power rather than to be the way that it used to be in previous administration. I know the time is shorted. I just want to talk something about Astana, if you have time for me.
Just very, very briefly.
Astana, they say de-escalation. That means the three powers, they decide to kill less Syrian than before. It's before the Iranian, and it's really funny to use de-escalation because Iranian and Russia are killing Syrian every day, and now they decide in Astana, you know what, we will decide to kill less Syrian every day. This doesn't work. This doesn't help. Doesn't fly. Nobody can recognize the three powers to impose their own will on the other country, which is the Syria and Syrian. I don't think this will be stabilizing, maybe short term, maybe 1 month, 2 months. The long term is the Syrian who should decide how to go forward. We cannot legitimize Iranian presence in Syria. This is very dangerous and a stabilizing factor for all the Arab world and Israel and Turkey.
You mentioned, Bassam, earlier how the role and the way that the West engages with Russia is perhaps changing. In Washington, Sergei Lavrov on Wednesday ducked and weaved around the media barrage that he found surrounding the firing of the FBI director and the probe into Russian campaign meddling. Now, on Syria, let's stay on topic, the Russian foreign minister offering up, well, what sounds like a glowing endorsement of Donald Trump.
Now, our dialogue is free of the ideological doctrines that were characteristic of the Obama administration. The Trump administration, the President himself, and the Secretary of State, as I was reminded today, are all business-minded people, and they want to reach agreements, not for the sake of demonstrating their achievements to anyone in terms of ideological preferences.
Alexei Klebnikov, is there something we should know about? Because I know that there was this visit by Rex Tillerson to Moscow, Lavrov coming to Washington for the first time in 4 years. Now they're together at that conference in Alaska. Is there something we should know about when it comes to Russia, the U.S., and Syria?
So, I mean, there is no surprise now and no secret that that was initially the U.S. idea, the U.S. plan to come up with this de-escalation zones plan, and Russia just put it through Astana process. So Turkey, Iran, and Syrian government agreed on that. So if I may to disagree with Bassem on that, this de-escalation plan deciding what to do with Syria instead of Syrians, it mainly aims at reducing violence and reducing fighting. Basically, what Trump and Putin meant by this plan is to basically create the more stable environment for launching political process. And as for the political process, all actors insist that only Syrians can decide what their constitution should be, what their state should look like, what relations between center and periphery will look like, what will be the role of the president, the government, so on and so forth. So basically, coming back to Russia-US sort of re-engagement in Syria, I think we should expect in coming months increasing cooperation between the two. As I already mentioned previously, US had lost much of its influence on the ground in Syria in previous months. So now it wants to regain it. And it's found a loophole in this situation to insert itself in Astana talks and to come up with this de-escalation zones plan. And as we can see, with its approval, it has really positive and good prospects to come into fruition. So we should see how technically it will be implemented on the ground, but having all important regional and global actors like Turkey, Iran, Russia, and US.
But Alexei, you heard Bassam's concern, which is Iran, thinking that Iran, at the result of all this, will have an outsized role and will even have perhaps a permanent presence in Syria.
Exactly, but the same concern, for example, Syrian government has about Turkish presence in north of Syria. So for now, there are talks about, just coming down to tuning down the rhetoric and to decreasing the violence on the ground. Only after that, the parties can discuss and decide on the scale of the military presence of one or another parties, because it still should be discussed. So there are options, and they're already been discussed, and I believe they're under discussion currently, that international troops, monitor troops, will be deployed in safety zones which will embrace those de-escalation zones. So there are many different options how to decrease the tensions between Syrian opposition in Iran and Turkey, or, for example, Saudi or Israeli or US concerns towards Iranian presence. So there are still a lot of options which can be negotiated, that can be discussed. So we just, the discussions should continue.
Shwan Zulal, do you have the sense that things are moving, that there is some kind of dynamic now to get out of the rut we've been in with this more than 6 years of fighting in Syria?
I mean, it's hard to know. I mean, things are moving in terms of you can see that Americans are more involved. The plan which they put together in about a year ago is slowly sort of coming to effect. These things takes time. And one of the, you can hear all these, outside powers, Iran, Turkey, Russia, US, the sectarian dimension and all the sort of issues which Syria has. I think one thing is very clear. Syria as it is, as one state, is not going to operate. Maybe at a later stage, it can sort of get back together as a federal state. But at this stage, I don't see any way that you can get all these sides talking together, because most of the actors in Syria now are proxies. They're fighting a war for somebody else. And neither side seems to accept the other as legitimate or having a say in the future of Syria. So therefore, I don't see the end game is here yet. But I think we're sort of seeing steps that it could see the de-escalation of the violence, and it's not going to be solving the issue. It's going to probably stop the killing. And one of the main reason the Europeans and the Americans are sort of interested in this is the destabilizing the region by having all these refugees escaping Syria. So if you calm the situation down, and then hopefully Syrians themselves will come to a conclusion that they need to sit down and really seriously think about the options they have, because the options are very limited. And as I said, I can't see Syria as it is functioning as one state. yes, I'm not saying that neither US or Russia are ready to let go of Syria as a unitary state. But you can see it's already very much divided, and I can see it maybe as a federal state, or maybe divided in the future. It could work, and at least to abate the violence. But I just can't see any of the parties trust each other or make allowances for another to be able to see Syrians live in peace again.
Metin Edmaja, we heard earlier from Bassam Barabandi talking about how he fears Iran might be stuck in for the long haul in Syria. How about Turkey? With that incursion in the north, how long will the Turks be staying in northern Syria?
Well, I mean, their presence is not a big one, and I don't think they will stay for a long time since the international community is already putting lots of pressure on the shoulders of Turkey. But on the other hand, I should also state that Iran doesn't have a history in Syria, but Turkey definitely has at least 500 years of history together during the Ottoman period, and as well as a neighbor. So Turkey definitely has more to say, more to contribute to the peace in Syria and the future of Syria. It has more to say. So, I mean, I don't think it would be correct to compare Iran and Turkey with each other, even with Russia and the US as well. I mean, both Russia and US still don't have clear agenda on terms of ending up the war, as well as after the end of the war as well. I mean, doesn't have an agenda, how it will be a country again, how it will be put it together, how all groups will come together and create another state. It doesn't have an agenda, including, of course, Turkey as well. But as I said, I mean, Turkey, instead of getting into the war, it would be better to contribute to the peace of Syria. It's already contributing with more than 3 million of the refugees hosting these people here. I mean, I have seen a big success comparing with other countries, including the Jordan and the Lebanon. I mean, Turkey is still the best option for the Syrian refugees. So, I mean, I think they should contribute in such a sense, humanitarian way, more and more, instead of just, you know, supporting some of the group against the others or getting involved into the war.
All right, lots of reactions on the hashtag F24debate. One with a bit of a nod to what Shwan Zulal was saying earlier about the future of Syria. Haid saying, governing post-ISIS Raqqa rather than capturing it seems to be the main concern for analysts and policymakers. Of course, Bassam Barabandi, we may be getting ahead of ourselves already thinking about a post-ISIS Raqqa. How close are we to seeing the fall of Raqqa?
Everybody hoped to be very soon. I think it will be very soon. I talked with the head of PYD or SDF when they came to DC, and again I insist on my point that they should be Kurdish Syrian agenda, and I told them that this is your opportunity, golden opportunity. You are the best allies to the United States to show to the Syrian and the Turks that you are Syrian Kurdish, by dealing the day after Raqqa, by involving more Arab tribes, more Arab inhabitants of Raqqa to control themselves and take the lead for day after. You shouldn't impose your wills the way you did it in Manbij or Jarablus or other areas, and try to make like what Assad's doing, just local council that you control it. Till today, there's big debate how day after looks like. Some military, American military on the ground, they told me last week that you don't have to worry about day after Raqqa because there will be no Raqqa. The city will be destroyed, literally. Again, my point that I think the Kurds, they have now the lead to prove who they are, what they want, and that will change their destiny in the Syrian conflict. Nobody can control the day after. We don't know what will happen.
All right, a chilling thought there about what will happen to the city and its population itself. Bassam Barabandi, many thanks for joining us from Washington.
Thank you very much. Can I add the last thing, which is very important? If 1 second.
Very
My colleagues
briefly.
from Russia, yeah, he said 3 times that United States lost its influence in Syria in the last 6 months. I want to confirm to him in the last 6 years, United States never tried to have influence in Syria. When Trump struck the regime, he put for this safe zone as big agenda. The Russian jump and say we will do safe zone or the escalating zone. Who the Russian themselves they were refusing that terminology for the last 3 years. United States is the superpower, and I think we are going to the right direction on Syria.
Okay.
I hope Russia will play a very positive role in that. Thank you.
All right, Metin Atmaja, many thanks. Alexei Klebnikov, opening up a can of worms there. We'll have to get you back for another debate. I want to thank as well Shwan Zulal for being with us from London, and Metin Atmaja in Ankara. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.